Calling to order the Municipality of Monroeville's Citizens Night and Agenda Setting meeting for September 6, 2022. It is approximately 7 p.m. If we'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Could I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Griesbach?
Here.
Mr. Hizzy?
Here.
Mr. Poach?
Here.
Mr. Stevenson?
Here.
Mr. Wolfram?
Here.
Mr. Adams?
Here.
Mr. Williams?
Here.
Mr. Biondo?
Here.
Mr. Little?
Here.
Mr. Ratcher?
Here.
Ms. Rock? Mr. Hugus?
Here.
Mr. Sedlak?
Here.
Mr. Weldon?
Here.
Welcome. This is our Citizens Night meeting. So this time period is for any resident or citizen to speak about any municipal council or any municipal issue for council. We always ask that you keep a 5-minute time limit on your comments. We feel that's ample time for you to get your point across. And then certainly there is another time period of speaking at next Tuesday's meeting as well. But at this point, I want to open up the floor for citizens, any remark or comment for council. However, there is a rezoning public hearing that we will be speaking of later in the meeting. So if you're going to comment about that rezoning, the Law Funeral Home, save your comments for that period. So this period right now is just for citizens, residents to speak about any other municipal matter at this point. So if there's anyone in attendance that would like to address council on any municipal issue other than the rezoning, now would be your time.
Mayor Francis. Come on up, Mayor Francis. Yep, you're up. Thank you.
If you could just please sign in if you haven't already.
She did.
Okay, and state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Mary Frances Thorne. I'm a 40-year resident of Monroeville, and I live in the 3rd Ward. And I'm here tonight as a representative of the Monroeville Public Library. I am the vice president of the library board. First off, what I wanted to do was to thank all of you here for your continued support of the library, for its operations, its programming, and all that we do and bring and offer for our community. First off, I want to thank you for your help for the Fun Fest, which we just wrapped up about a week or two ago. I want to give a huge shout out to the Public Works Department. They were phenomenal as usual, helping to set up, helping to clear everything. It was the smoothest setup that we have had at a Fun Fest in the 4 years we've done this, and we had a grand total of 2,500 attendees there. So it was very well received, and it was a great outreach and community bonding event. As you probably know by now, this is Love Your Library Month. I love my library, obviously. I was there this morning just as a random thing to pick up a book for my husband, and there was an event going on called a robot petting zoo. At the robot petting zoo, we had toddlers doing a little bit of coding and coding bots. So they were getting comfortable using STEM technology. Even, they're not even out of diapers yet. And this is all put on by the library staff. Since this is Love Your Library Month, I wanted to invite all of you to consider a donation to the library. As part of the Love Your Library Month, the Buncher Foundation is having a prorated matching grant to all the libraries that participate in the Love Your Library donation. That would include any outright donation, whether it be you bring it to the library, mail it in, Venmo it in, or however you get it there. And also, they will be prorating anything that you do as a part of a fundraiser, including going into the library, perusing the Book Nook, which are the donated books, and you can buy those for pennies on the dollar. Those will also be matched by the Buncher Foundation. In addition, I wanted to let you know about two events that are coming up this month. One will be on the 17th of September, and it is the first installment of the traveling trivia nights that's going to take place throughout all the Allegheny County libraries, and Monroeville is hosting the very first one. It's from 7 to 9 p.m. Everyone is welcome. You can get a table. They're $20, basically $20 a person, and it's a whole lot of fun. Bring your own booze, but they can all, there is all,
Adult beverages.
adult
Adult
beverages.
beverages.
But they will also have other beverages and snacks that were provided for you. Plus, of course, there's going to be other raffles and baskets. It's all in the theme of trying to raise money for the library. And for the Harry Potter fans, the next Love Your Library Trivia event will be in October at the Allegheny Valley Libraries. Also, just to let you know, we're also having a Chili and More event on the 25th. It's on a Sunday, so on a Sunday, if you're going to be out and about and you want somebody else to cook you dinner, there's chili. You can order it ahead of time. They will also be offering other raffle baskets and the like with it. Support your library. I mean, it is, the one place in the community where everyone is welcome, where everyone is asked to use it. You can use it without having to put out a penny of your pocket. All right, this is all, well, taxes, but thank you for all of your support for the library, which you've done and will continue to do, and please stop into the library. Make use of it. We have more. It's not the library that you had when you were growing up. There is something going on at that library every moment that it is open, and many when it is not as well. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll leave the floor open for anyone who'd like to address council on any municipal matter. Seeing none, we're going to close the Citizens Night part of the meeting and move over to our agenda-setting meeting. All of council is in attendance as prior. And council, we have minutes to consider for next Tuesday of Citizens Night of August 4th, 2022, the council agenda-setting meeting of August 4th, 2022, and the regular council meeting of August 9th, 2022. Is there any questions or comments about those minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
We're not going to.
We don't have to.
On
Motion
the
is-
one, on the Monroeville Library Director spelling of her last name, it's headline, not headline. So
Thank you.
just.
We'll make
need
that
to change
correction.
I will.
Any other correction or comments on the minutes, council?
Very clever, Bob.
Very good. And all these items that we're discussing this evening will be considered on next Tuesday, September 13th. This is not a voting meeting this evening. No decisions are made this evening. So reports of our tax collections, council, any questions or comments about them this month? Seeing none. List of bills and budget transfers. Council, any questions, comments?
No, sir.
Payroll report. Questions or comments? Seeing none.
Don't you start.
We will consider vacancies on boards, commissions, and authorities on Tuesday the 13th. And council, we're moving over to our bids and proposals. We have one item, surplus equipment. Mr. Little, if you would.
We do not have anything on the surplus equipment, I don't think, Joe, do we?
Yeah, we have 3 pickup trucks. Well, actually, 1 expedition and 2 pickup trucks. The auction ends Friday at 10. It's on govdeals.com.
I mean, we haven't received anything.
No, it
Oh,
ends,
okay, that's
yeah.
what I meant.
We've got bids so far, but it ends on Friday.
Okay.
But if anyone's interested, govdeals.com.
Com.
Very good. Council, questions or comments about the surplus equipment? Seeing none, moving on. And we are at our old business, 22-1-Z Law Funeral Home. Mr. Little.
Yeah, The applicant is requesting to rezone the portion of tax parcel 857M195 that is currently zoned R1 Single Family Residential to C2 Business Commercial. The total area of property is 4.411 acres, and the property is located at 2555 Haymaker Road. This is a public hearing, so anybody who wants to give testimony will have to be sworn in.
So is the applicant here this evening and their representatives, if you guys want to come up? And this being a public hearing item, if there's anyone in the audience that plans to add testimony, I would ask that you stand up and I'm going to swear you in. If you decide, if I swear you in, you can always change your mind and not speak. If you don't get sworn in now and change your mind, I can swear you in later. So you have plenty of time.
You're just a swearing guy.
All right, so if you all please raise your right hand for me. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
It is.
Great. Thank you so much. Sir, if you could just state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Thomas Lonich, L-O-N-I-C-H. I'm an attorney licensed in the Commonwealth, and I maintain an office in the city of Washington, Pennsylvania. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, Home of Law, Inc., and Mr. and Mrs. Law. This is Mr. Dwight Law, Chandra Law. They're here with me tonight, and you'll be hearing from them a little later. We are here to request a rezoning of approximately 4.5 acres located at 2555 Haymaker Road. It is currently zoned R1. We're seeking to have that property zoned to a C2 for purposes of allowing a funeral home at that premises. After two public hearings, a number of questions, documentation, information, statements by Mr. and Mrs. Law, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval for the rezoning, and I'm sure you have that somewhere here before you. I have provided to the court reporter a packet of exhibits, also to your solicitor. In that packet, the first item, which does not necessarily have to be marked as an exhibit, is my entry for appearance on behalf of the applicant, and I ask that that be accepted and be made part of the record for this matter. I have here what I have previously marked as exhibits 1 and 1A.
And which one would you like to show first, the black and white one? or
Well,
the
I'm going to
color?
show the color one,
Okay. So we'll have to,
that way.
yeah.
Bring it up.
Maybe in here. No, it just went blank. Last second.
I'm glad Joe, the ball is not working.
Yeah.
And then we'll check to make sure if the audio's okay there. Jared, are we still okay with that microphone?
Can you hear me?
You may have to step to the side, sir, to one of the.
Let's start with the presentation, and then he'll interrupt us if
Okay. What I have before you now is the zoning map from your records, which shows the property in question. It is the color map that shows the difference in the zoning. The property in question that's owned by Mr. and Mrs. Law is this triangle, right here. It's on the screen, it would be a light gray color. Here on the map, it's a lighter green color. That's the 4.5 acres. All this surrounding it in red is the commercial zoning. So you have here, Haymaker Road is here, and I have some photos I'll be showing a little later. But this property in this area here is a little discoloration, but that's where the Trinity Lutheran Church sits. The building remains there, is there. There is no plan other than internally to do some modifications. The building is not going to be raised. There'll be no extra construction, anything like that concerning that building. But there'll be some internal modifications for the funeral home. It was a church. There are a number of rooms in that building as it sits, including a large congregation area, some smaller places down on the, I'll say the basement floor, which provided a kitchen, breakout rooms for schooling, lessons and things like that. But as you can see, a portion of this property, which is here, which is also owned by the Laws, this fingernail here. That is zoned commercial. So the property has a split zoning classification from the residential to already commercial. I'm going to slide this up a little to the actual schematic. And this is a survey that was done a number of years ago, but it basically gives you the same idea. This triangle, which is flag portion, this is what's zoned commercial. This triangle here, the church sits right in this area, which has been designated as Lot 2. All of that is currently, here, it's marked, I'm sorry, Brick Church, right here on Lot 3. That is the current residential. This area here is residential. It would match up with this area along Colgate Road. But everything around it is zoned commercial. I have in the packet what is Exhibit 2 that I've marked. That is the deed for the property in question that actually shows that Home of Law owns these lots and is what has been subject or submitted to as part of the application. What I have marked is Exhibit 3 to give you an idea, and these photos were taken back in March of this year, and I deliberately took the photos there in March because the vegetation was not as prominent as it is today, but to give you an idea of how the area is still separated from the residential.
If you could just,
Turn it over upside down.
Yeah, just flip it over.
perfect.
Looks better.
All right. So this is what sits now on the property, the Trinity Lutheran Church. And this picture is taken from Haymaker Road onto the property. And as you can see and probably know, the property is separated from Haymaker Road by a large guardrail that you'll see throughout these photographs. Item 2, again, is from the viewpoint of Haymaker Road down toward the property. To the left, there is a large, I'm going to describe it as a gully. It's probably at least 60 feet or more so before, and there's a picture later on, before you even hit the residences that are along that area. So all this is separated from any residential areas by Haymaker Road on this side, by the topography, the buffer zone on the bottom half of it. Again, this picture is taken straight down Haymaker Road. You'll see again the guardrail is to the right. This would be from the back end of the portion of the property. If I stand here and take that picture, the back entrance of it would be the edge of the edge of the parking lot before any of the residential homes begin. There is also, and importantly, an interior roadway which serviced the church. So over here to the left, that interior road will allow traffic to come right off of Haymaker into the church, into the funeral home area, and go back out, depending on which way you want traffic to go. So there would not be necessarily any backup on Haymaker Road or any of the roads to accommodate any of the traffic that may be attending funeral services there. The interior road is here. You can see Haymaker is up in this area. This picture shows the back entrance of the building, and there's a corner lot, which is the point or triangular tip of the drawing that you saw in Exhibits 1 and 2. There's a small shed here, but that's what the back area of the property looks like. Again, this just shows the back portion of the property, a garage area down in this area here. And all of this leads up into the red light and will butt up against the commercial property. This is the back end of the property. If you go to the back end of the property and look directly over, you'll see this is how close the commercial activity is to this property. I believe that's the medical center there, and it's right up against this property. As you can see from the previous, the exhibits. Again, this is another picture of the corner of the building, the medical center. All of this is the highway parking for the medical center, which is shown here. This is right over, this area here is right over the hillside. So if you look at this area here, where it's it's greener on the color photos, the original, that's the portion, the flat portion of what the subject property is. Right down there leads into the hillside, into the medical center, and along the highway. This is what's taken from that angle. It's over the hillside. That's a portion of the parking lot. I don't have to tell you what that area is like as far as traffic, as far as everything, the commercial activity that takes place right there off of this property. This picture here is of the parking lot away from the building. So the lower left-hand corner here, down in here, would be where the residential homes begin. Generally, and as you can see from these other pictures, this is the back entrance of the property. There's the gully that I was referring to. As I said, there is a natural buffer that runs through this gully area of trees, of bushes, those type of things, in which our position is that when that is grown up, or whatever buffer is required by the board and by your ordinance that the laws would have to establish, you would not be able to see the activities of a funeral home from those residential properties. Down here in the corner, I have another picture that shows a little bit. These are where the residences start. And my understanding, these are the backs of the homes there. The entrances of the home are around the block and down the corner on Colgate. So the front of the homes don't even face this area.
First house is 297.
Again, this is another picture. Show the residences from the back end of that parking lot. This is a little closer picture. As you can see, there's a great deal of bushes, jaggers, things like that, before you even get to what would perhaps be the property line of those residences there. And this is a little closer toward the driveway area. The homes are of a significant distance from where the parking lot area would be for the funeral home. So again, noting that any requirements that the ordinances or the board wishes as far as a buffer, it would completely, we believe, screen any of the funeral home uses. So those residents would not be able to see it. There would be compliance, obviously, with any of your lighting, noise. Generally, I don't believe that the establishment of the funeral home in that area where that building is located on this property would be of any intrusion to any of the residential areas along that roadway. There are a couple items I would like to mention, and I want to stress, it is our position that the rezoning of this property from the residential to commercial does not create a spot zoning scenario. This property is surrounded on at least 3 areas by commercial. It abuts, it touches commercial established zoning in this area. The areas where there is a residential character to this property are all delineated by Haymaker Road or a buffer zone, all along those sideways. So you don't have a spot zoning where you're taking a piece of property and distinguishing it or discriminating against it as opposed to anything surrounding it. Because nearly everything surrounding this, including a portion of this property, is zoned in the commercial aspect of it. Again, there are such things as the natural buffers, the landmarks, all of that, in which you'd be able to take this property, rezone it to commercial, and it would be a natural flow of the plan of the other existing commercial activities in this area. At this time, I would like to call Mr. Law to testify. Mr. Law, you were sworn in, so just remember that. Please keep your voice up and address the members of the board here. Could you please state your name for the record, please?
Dwight M. Law,
Mr. Law, what is your current residential address?
4808 Greenhead Court, Murraysville. Yeah,
You and Mrs. Law formed a company known as Home of Law, Inc., is that correct?
correct,
And you are the current owners of the property at 255 Haymaker Road, which is the subject property.
correct,
And you are requesting a change in the zoning from the current residential to a C2, is that correct?
correct.
And the purpose of that is to,
To establish a funeral home.
the building that's there now, do you intend that there be any raising of that building, any outside construction, a new building, anything like that?
Not at all. We plan on doing some minor modification. Mostly what we'll do is going to be cosmetic in nature.
So that we're clear for the record and for the board, Mr. Law, if this rezoning is permitted, do you intend to use the property for any other use other than a funeral home, and perhaps somewhere down the line as an accessory use to a funeral home?
Funeral home is our primary, that's what we're seeking.
Do you currently own or operate any other funeral homes?
Yes, I do. Currently, we own House of Law on 9406 Frankstown Road in Penn Hills. But before that, my family's been in the funeral business. In 29, it'll be 100 years. Our first establishment was in Washington, PA in 1929. Then that was my great uncle. Then we opened up in Denora in 1950. We opened up in Brownsville in 1956. Then we opened up in Erie in 1970. We opened up in Wilkinsburg in 94, and then we opened up in Penn Hills in 2004.
Funeral homes have to be licensed by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, is that
Correct.
correct? Based upon your experience, your knowledge of the area, are you able to talk a little bit of why you feel a funeral home in this area is needed?
Well, the funeral industry is one of the last segregated industries we have. We do primarily, I'd say 95% Afro-American. And we do a lot of business out here in Monroeville, down over the hill, and the other communities, surrounding communities. But as everyone knows, the Afro-American migration has been coming eastward, and we have a number of clients that have asked that why don't we consider coming out here? They're tired of riding the closest funeral home or Afro-American funeral home from Monroeville, us in Penn Hills or Watts and Braddock, and the people asked, we would like to have something local.
So I'm going to show you what I've marked as Exhibit 4. And I've indicated this is a proposed developers agreement
Upside
between.
down.
I've indicated this is a proposed developers agreement. We've marked it as Exhibit 4. But I want to point out to you, and I'll comment to the board a little bit about this further, but there's a clause in here that reads, quote, "Law is willing to enter into this agreement and thereby assert that the above-described property will only be used as a funeral home and any accessory use associated with the funeral home."
That would be correct.
And you'd be willing to sign this agreement?
Absolutely. Actually, our current funeral home in Pin Hills on Frankstown has a similar stipulation in the deed.
Okay. Well, let me show you what I've marked as Exhibit 5. And again, I've marked this as a proposed restrictive covenant and deed restrictions. And in here, it again indicates that the property will only be used for a funeral home and accessory use.
That's correct.
And you're willing to add this to a deed to further your testimony here that you're only going to use that property as a funeral home. Is that correct?
That's correct, absolutely.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions of Mr. Law at this time. I don't know if the board has any at this time.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Counsel? Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. Is it just a funeral home? There's a funeral home and crematory.
There you go.
Well, our primary purpose, a crematory would be something we would consider down the line, but a funeral home is what we're applying for.
All right, so you're not going to apply for a crematory at this time?
No, we're not.
A question for you.
Yes, sir.
On that property, have you considered using that intersection at the hospital, that red light, for egress and coming in and out that property?
Well, at this point, we've not considered that because I think that that would be part of a land development or use that the municipality may have. We're here trying to get it rezoned, and then once rezoned, we'll have the schematics and how it'll be laid out and whatever would be necessary.
Thank you.
If I may, while Mr. Law is still standing here, we had indicated in our application, and I'll indicate here tonight, somewhere down the line, Mr. and Mrs. Law may consider a crematorium as an accessory use to this funeral home. I indicated that in openness and frankness to the Planning Commission, to the board, we wanted to raise that. Of course, if it's allowed to have an accessory use, they'll comply with whatever requirements the municipality has or may have. I understand you may be looking at an ordinance to do all that. But the primary purpose is a funeral home. And as I said before, the Planning Commission doing this, and I know this is a sophisticated board, and sometimes people come in and they tell you they want to do one thing, get their foot in the door, and then suddenly they're thinking, oh, by the way, we wanted to do all this, we want to do all that. I indicated, Mr. and Mrs. Law, we're going to avoid all that. If somewhere down the line you think that somehow a crematorium may go in, we're going to be upright and forward and say that to the board. But the primary purpose is a funeral home. It may not ever be allowed. Financially, they may not decide to do that. So, as I said, the request, while that was raised and that was fair game as part of the discussion, the request is only to rezone it for purposes of having that funeral home there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
One question, Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Poach.
Yeah, sure. So from the views that you showed, again, there's the buffer zone to the residential street on Colgate.
Yes.
And then the commercial zone on the other side, but there's nothing between the residential property across the street. You haven't shown that, the particular view there on
If
Haymaker.
you, I will,
See if we're upside down. Yeah, it's really hard.
do you mean this property here?
Nope. Oh, yeah, that's, yeah, on Haymaker, yes, that's correct.
There, Haymaker Road
Haymaker.
separates all of the property.
I
And
mean,
that's
but there's
why-
nothing in front of the property. You mentioned, like, the gullies have the trees and things like
No.
that.
There's trees on that side.
On the Haymaker Road side, yeah,
Very
down
little
here
vegetation.
toward the end, I guess there are some trees.
There's some, but yeah, nothing.
But to this property here, the road itself is,
Any other consideration for landscape additions to further screen that area?
We would certainly consider that, certainly.
whatever would be suggested or required.
And I
to
believe that
screen
the
it.
parking lot is below Haymaker Road.
Yes.
There's definitely a bank there.
No.
6 foot in the grate on the road.
Yes.
It is, and that's why I pointed out in some of the pictures, the guardrail. Because the guardrail separates it, then it drops down. But absolutely, if there's a suggestion as to any type of screening or buffer, we'd be more than open to listen to that.
Thank you.
Do we have a measurement from the parking lot, where the parking lot is and ends, to where the property lines on Colgate are? So I know you said there's that buffer zone of trees. Do we have a measurement of how?
I don't have an exact buffer. Of course, we would do that at time of land development or things like that. I estimated, and I'll defer to your zoning officer or anybody else who's been there.
Paul,
By
do you
some
have
of
that?
those pictures, I think that it's, it's the gully itself from the edge of the paved parking lot area to that gully is probably 60 feet or so. And
I
then-
agree with that. There's about a 50-foot vegetative buffer strip that exists now. The actual distance from the rear property lines on Colgate to the building, there's a dimension on the survey, but it's too small, I can't read it. It's 3 digits though, so it's at least 100 feet.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
Mr. Law, I'm sorry. Mr. Law, you mentioned a number of different number of other funeral homes that you have. How many of those are still in operation?
Our Penn Hills operation, my uncle died, my dad died, my brother died, and we're down to Penn Hills and hopefully Monroeville.
And your intention would be to have both, ideally?
Correct.
You wouldn't be closing Penn Hills?
No, not at all, not at all. We're just, again, we're trying to be able to serve the people in this community. We got our hands full. Actually, our funeral home is probably one of the, at one point last year, we were the fastest growing funeral home in western Pennsylvania. So we have our hands full in Penn Hills.
Mr. Law, where was the location for one in Washington County? I'm curious.
We
Is
have
it on
two of them-
Jefferson Avenue,
two
18?
two of them. We have one, the first one in Washington was on Lincoln. It, right where W and J, where the tennis courts are, if you're familiar with it.
So off of Route
Right-
40.
Right, put it this way, today, our first funeral home is a fraternity house.
I grew up in
Okay, so you know where I'm talking about. And then our second one was in Denora.
Okay.
Very good. Council, any other questions at this point? We're still, the public hearing is still open. We have some time. We're going to ask for testimony from the audience as well, but council, any questions up at this
One
point?
question, Mayor. You mentioned about an agreement to keep this just a funeral home.
Correct.
And what if you would decide to sell this, if it was rezoned?
It would only be able to be used for a funeral home. That's the restriction in my deed in Penn Hills. It can only be used as a funeral home.
I guess my question is, how is that enforced? Who enforces that? Who has standing to enforce that? I mean, go ahead.
I can address that, and there's also a packet, and I previously provided that, but I'll provide it. What I've marked as Exhibit 6 is a memorandum of law and a number of cases, and I provided those to your solicitor. I want to make one thing clear. This agreement is not an attempt at some type of quid pro quo, a promise, contractual zoning, anything like that. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't raise that to impugn on the integrity of the board, nor to challenge the credibility of Mr. and Mrs. Law. What I've offered to that is one, the developer's agreement. And I know there's a little difference because we're asking for a rezoning, but the developer's agreement that says they're only going to use this as a funeral home. If the municipality is unable to enforce that language, a neighbor could come forward perhaps and say, hey, look, you have this, I'm going to challenge it. But more importantly, if they put the restrictive covenant in the deed, than a neighbor or somebody can come in and say, that property was only to be used as a funeral home. And I believe they can, that neighbor or someone there would be able to challenge that. My purpose in providing you with that was to further say, look, this is how serious Mr. and Mrs. Law are about this. They're not coming to you just saying, hey, rezone this and we'll do anything we want. They have repeatedly said that we only want to use it as a funeral home. And so to bolster that testimony, that credibility, we're offering that agreement, that restrictive covenant deed. There is some degree of you having to take Mr. and Mrs. Law at their word if you rezone this property. I'm not naive to any of that. But in doing that, I'm telling you, Mr. and Mrs. Law are saying, hey, we're asking you to do this. We've told you we'll do this. We'll enter into this agreement to allow you to do that. But it is in no way what a contract zoning. Give us the rezoning and we'll agree to that. Nothing at all.
Thank you for the explanation.
Yes.
Council, any other questions at this moment?
I have a few more.
Are you done with your presentation? Or you?
No, I have a few more.
No problem.
Okay. Mrs. Law, will you come up? You are under oath. Please keep your voice up. Can you state your name for the record?
Chandra M. Law.
And you are married to Mr. Law who just testified, correct?
Yes,
All right.
23 years as of last Sunday.
You and
Thank you, thank you.
you and Mr. Law formed a company, which is the owner of the property in question, correct?
Yes.
And you're requesting the property be rezoned from the residential to commercial for purposes of allowing a funeral home to be operated at that property.
Yes,
And again, if the property is rezoned, you only intend to use that property for the funeral home and perhaps somewhere down the line, an accessory use, correct?
yes.
I also want to show you what I've marked as Exhibit 4. And this is a proposed agreement. It contains language, quote, "Law is willing to enter into this agreement and thereby assert that the above described property will only be used as a funeral home and any accessory use associated with a funeral home." And you are willing to enter into that agreement and sign this document, is that correct?
Yes,
And let me also then show you what has been marked as Exhibit 5. That's a proposed restrictive covenant for a deed restriction, which provides in your deed that the property in question would only be used for a funeral home or accessory use purposes. And you
Yes.
would be agreeable to that, correct?
yes.
I don't have any other questions at this time. If the board has any questions of Mrs. Law?
Council, any questions for Ms. Law?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to call your zoning officer, Mr. Wilden. Wherever you want him to sit or stand,
Oh, you can stay there if you want, unless you have to point at a map.
I don't intend for it to be painful, sir. All right, I don't know if you raised your hand during the course of,
I did not.
Mr. Williams needs to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Thank you.
could you state your full name for the record, sir?
Paul Henry Wielden III,
And, sir, what is your position with the municipality?
Community Planner and Zoning Officer.
You received an application from the applicant requesting a change in zoning from the R1 to the C2, correct?
Correct.
And the request has always been in the application, and the testimony was for the change in zoning to use this property as a funeral home for the possible accessory use, correct?
Correct.
And in the course of proceedings, both in the application, the several meetings before the Planning Commission, and here tonight, you dealt with either myself or Mr. and Mrs. Law, correct?
Correct.
And during the course of all those proceedings, there were a number of documents requested or information additionally requested by the Planning Commission, correct?
Yes.
And we provided all of those things that the Planning Commission and your office asked for, correct?
Yes.
And you were present during the testimony of Mr. and Mrs. Law as well as a presentation before the Planning Commission?
Yes.
And throughout all of those issues before the Planning Commission and here tonight, Mr. and Mrs. Law have always indicated that they intend only to use the property in question as a funeral home and possibly a crematorium as an accessory use down the line. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have. Thank you, sir.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So we have a new zoning,
Ordinance.
zoning ordinance coming out. This use, a funeral home, would stay in the C2? Would it still be in the C2 zoning district? Do you know?
I believe that is correct. I don't think that changes.
I think that's all, and I guess the accessory use, that would go before the zoning hearing board if they were to want to use it as a.
I know in the draft ordinance that we're working on, there was a separate use for crematorium, so it may not have to go to ZHB.
Okay.
It may be a permitted or conditional use within the new zoning ordinance.
Okay.
And funeral homes are allowed in most of the other districts?
C2.
Only C2,
Only C2? No other district other than C2
currently, correct.
currently?
I guess, would that change? Would it be allowed in any?
That was your first question, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't have the draft in front of me, and I don't remember, but I don't think we changed it. I'm pretty sure it just stayed in the C2.
Okay.
I guess an aside question. When do you anticipate the new ordinance will be adopted?
Hopefully by the middle of next year, early next year.
Okay.
And we haven't even seen a draft yet.
No,
This
I-
council hasn't even
right.
seen a draft yet.
Mr. Wilton, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Ratcher, please.
Mr. Wilton, one more question related to the new ordinance. There are some proposed map changes there. Do any of those map changes affect the parcel that's being discussed right now?
Not yet. There were certain areas in the new zoning map that are in question. This is one of the ones that still has question marks by it.
Okay.
Is that related to, I'm sorry, is that related to this, being
It-
before us?
Just due to proximity of North American Martyrs and Forbes Hospital, that whole area may become like a medical office overlay or some other use other than residential, strictly residential.
What about the rest of Haymaker from Colgate Drive to to that large intersection right there? Is that what,
McKinley.
do we know what that's zoned?
That's the big question mark on the map right now.
So currently, North American Martyrs property on Haymaker is zoned
Residential.
R1. Same as this
I think it is R1.
I think it is, yeah.
It's R1.
R1, which is the same as this property we're talking about, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
For the most part, there's a piece of this property.
Other than the small, the
C2, but,
sliver, correct.
98% of it's R1.
And then the Forbes Hospital property, what is it currently zoned as?
I believe they got a rezoning to a higher residential, just for building height, like we did for the apartment buildings. But it is not commercial.
No, it's the, I think R4 or R5.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely not C2.
Actually, I have a.
correct,
Okay.
correct.
I'm sorry, Paul, I gotta ask you one more. That little sliver, is there an elevation drop there?
A lot, yes. And I'm sure whoever did that, they did it for sort of these purposes, to keep the, 1 foot in the door. So we call that a flag lot. Normally, a parcel would be, rectangular, would sort of close on itself, but this particular lot has, I think it's like a 50-foot access down to 48 Moss Side.
Yeah.
And that was strictly so that if they would have, they could advertise it as fronting on Route 48, something like that.
Actually, if you look at Exhibit 1A, that is actually a sewage and drainage easement. It's 25 feet wide. So you really couldn't build anything on it or even have, initially, I thought it might have been access.
Yeah, I mean, it might be labeled as an easement, but it shows up as a property line.
Yeah, this is what's on the drawing.
Because if it was solely just an easement, it could cross multiple property lines. It wouldn't be necessarily be a property line.
Yeah, the reason that I think it could be is because there's a 20-foot sewer easement running behind the property, that then goes down to that point, and there's a manhole marked on this drawing right here.
Okay.
It raises a number of, I guess, separate legal questions on that being zoned that way. You could never do anything with that
No,
property.
just with the dimensions of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
And then the items on this, on the map, there's, so Lot 1, Lot 2, and Lot 3. So
Yes.
Lot 3 is the one, and there's a Lot 4.
Yeah.
Yes, the flag.
Yeah. The hillside, yeah.
The current use, as far as the house of worship that's there currently, that's all in Lot 3?
yes.
Yeah, right here.
And then, but 2 and 1, they're still part of the,
They're part of that triangle.
still part of the whole thing that you're
Yes.
asking for?
That's all.
Yep.
Right.
Okay,
His client owns all three.
Yes.
understood. Council, any further questions at this point? We will have more time for questions, but does anyone have questions at this moment?
I still have some more.
Please, yeah, just go
Thank
ahead.
you. Dr. Glaze?
Yeah, and we'll go through everyone that you want to call up, and then we'll open up for anyone else that's here in attendance as
Yes.
well.
Okay. Dr. Glaze, I remind you that you're under oath.
Yes, sir.
Please state your name for the board, please.
William Raymond Glaze.
Okay. Dr. Glaze, I understand that you wanted to say something with regard to this application and rezoning here tonight.
Yes, sir.
You want to address the board?
Well, I've known Dwight for a while, and he's had funeral homes. I live in Monroeville, 32 years. Kids went to Gateway, grandkids are going to Gateway, so have a long history. But I've pastored in the city, and I've seen the Law Funeral Home in Wilkinsburg and Penn Hills, and the impact that it has made on the community. Just a place where people in the community can feel good about, sending their loved ones into eternity. And they do a first-class job as far as treating people well. They are people of integrity. And I believe, as Mr. Law said, with the migration of a lot of African Americans eastward, I think that there will be more and more people that will take advantage of him being here, and it'll be such a blessing to this community. And again, just in my experience, I've seen that it has done nothing but, been a positive placement in our communities, and it has been something that has been a blessing to the people and the residents of our communities.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone have any questions, Dr. Glaze?
I'd also like to say that I married Dwight and Shannon. She said 23 years ago, so I must have used some good glue.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Reverend Hunt? Sir, I'm going to remind you, you're under oath here for this hearing. Could you please
Yes.
state your full name for the record, please?
My full name is James Emery Hunt.
And you also sometimes go by Reverend Hunt, is that correct?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. All right, sir, I understand you'd like to make a few comments tonight concerning this matter, if you would, please.
Yes, I would. As Dr. Glaze, I've been a longtime resident of Monroeville, almost 40 years. I was a teacher at Gateway. That was what originally brought me to Penn Hills, to Monroeville. I pastor in Penn Hills. But I want to say this here about the laws, that they are just people of integrity. I've heard the conversation here about maybe concerns about them, or any group that comes before you to, essentially present themselves as one thing and then, switch out later and say, well, that isn't these folks. They have served families from the church I pastor, First Baptist Church of Penn Hills. I've been there almost 34 years. And again, always with integrity, always with care. And I believe it would just be a great addition to Monroeville to have them establish a funeral home and also a wonderful reuse of a church facility that it would be used again to comfort families at the hardest times that they're going through, and again to bring comfort and care to them. So I just hope you would support them in their application. And again, I just have the greatest confidence that they would just be an asset to Monroeville and this community that I love too. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Any questions?
Oh.
Not so fast.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you do, sir. All right, thank you.
Ms. Owens? Ms. Owens, I'm going to remind you, you're under oath. Could you please state your full name for the record?
Jessica Owens.
Ms. Owens, I understand you wrote a letter, but you'd like to read that tonight. Is that correct?
Yes, I'll read. I'm not.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Jessica Owens. I'm a homeowner and resident here in Monroeville for the last 7 years. I actually live minutes from the location in question off Haymaker on Ramsey. I've had the honor of knowing the Law family, both Chandler and Dwight, for over 20 years. I've used them, I know them both personally, as well as used their funeral services and burial service for countless friends and family, including both my parents. They do a wonderful job, very professional, very supportive. I fully support the decision to allow the rezoning. I believe it's a needed resource for this community and will be served well by them for many years to come. I'm happy to know that there will be such services available to service my community and our unique needs. As Monroeville, we do have a diverse demographic, and we're currently lacking in inclusive afterlife service options. I know just transportation-wise, getting to the other ends of the city to have our needs met when our loved ones have passed away, it would make it much more convenient. They have a long history of being an asset to the communities in which they serve, so I'm looking forward to them coming to Monroeville. So I thank you for your consideration in rezoning.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
No questions.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
As Exhibit 7, there's introduced that into the record also. We received a letter from Pastor Curtis and Nancy White from the Lord's Church family. And I'm not going to read this to the board. You have it, and it's in the record. But it is in support of the request, and specifically the request by Mr. and Mrs. Law to have this property rezoned for use as a funeral home.
And for clarification, that church is on Haymaker Road, just a few parcels down,
Correct.
Yes.
just so everyone knows what we're talking about. That's right before, right
address-
before Saunders Station, the Saunders Station turnoff.
The address is 2517 Haymaker Road. Exhibit 8, we would also make that part of the record, is again a letter from Todd Hollis. Todd is an attorney licensed in the Commonwealth, maintains an office and practice, but he's also a resident of Monroeville. The letter, again, is in support for this request for the rezoning, and specifically the request to use this property if rezoned for a funeral home purposes. So that is also part of the record.
And Todd lives on Haymaker.
Yes. And Todd also lives on Haymaker. There are a couple items, if the board will indulge me before you call on the public. I just wanted to indicate the use of this as a funeral home is a residential in nature use. This is not a commercial activity of operating the premises as a funeral home. It is probably the least intrusive commercial use of anything listed in your zoning ordinance as it is. And why funeral home is listed in the commercial zoning, I'm not sure. I'll leave that up to whatever history the municipality may have, but that may be something that's in consideration now of changing it. Again, I explained to you our purposes in providing that language of what we'd be willing to do to further bolster the credibility, to further enhance the Mr. and Mrs. Law's testimony, the testimony of the witnesses. This is what they intend to do. That's what they're going to do. Any concerns about a buffer or lighting or noise, there'll be complete compliance with whatever your land development ordinance or any of the performance standards that you may have as part of the zoning ordinance. So that'll come at a later date, but clearly any of the concerns that anybody may have, I can't imagine it would be noisy. Any lighting that may be there would obviously be directed and shine only on the property in question. All of those standards, a buffer zone to insulate it from anybody else in that neighborhood, we'd be willing to comply with. As I said, the building already exists, so it isn't, we're walking in here saying, let's tear it all down and build up a new structure and ask for variances on height or size or anything like that. It's there. The insides will have to be retrofitted and accommodated, but, you know, that's all will take place inside. As I said, what I've marked as Exhibit 6 previously gave, and your solicitor has a copy of the legal memorandum. And of course, he's going to advise you on any legalities that you have questions about, and I'll leave that up to him in his role as solicitor. The testimony tonight, and I'm not certain what you may hear from anybody else, but the testimony on our part shows that there is a need for this funeral home in this area. You heard the testimony from Mr. Law primarily of why this is necessary, why it fulfills a need for the community. And one of the items that you look at in a rezoning is the rezoning detrimental to the health, safety, morals, and welfare of the community? And I would submit to you, in this instance, on the testimony that you have and how this property will be used, no, it is not a detriment. In fact, it enhances the community. It provides a need for the community. It provides a service for the community. It is a positive plus nature for this area. And so when you consider this application, I'm sure that you will consider everything that we've presented here tonight. I would ask that after you call for public comments, that I be given the opportunity only to address, if necessary, those public comments and reserve that time. But other than that, on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Law, we would ask that you approve this request for rezoning and allow this property to be developed for use as a funeral home. Thank you very much.
Counselor, before you step away,
Yes.
I just want to put three things into the record, and obviously with your consent.
Yes.
And those are the zoning map, our entire zoning map for the community, the comprehensive plan, and our zoning ordinance, just to round out the record. Those, I'll use letters since you used numbers. Okay. Those will be exhibits A, B, and C. A will be the zoning map, B will be the comprehensive plan, C will be the zoning ordinance.
I have no problem with any of that. And as far as I know, the property was properly posted and it was advertised, so unless there's any inconsistencies that we're unaware of, we would agree to all of that also.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
And I do have a question, actually for the laws, your other funeral homes, your current hours of operation, what's a typical weekly?
Our office opens up at 9 a.m. and closes at 4 a.m., 4 p.m., I'm sorry.
Okay.
Typically, our viewings are from 4 to 8, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Funeral service typically start at 10 or 11 a.m.
And you are seven days a week, 6 days a week?
7 days a week, correct.
We're not open 7 days a week. We answer the phone 24 hours, 7 days a week. So we have a live service that answers the phone for us. So the building's not open 24/7.
Okay, but
Right. But we do have office hours established.
Understood. But as far as viewings and services, are they?
Are they 7 days a week? Not on Sundays unless necessary.
Okay.
So we do, we accommodate our families. We try not to do Sundays, but if our families have to, we will.
Understood. Thank you.
Mr. and Mrs. Law, are you both funeral directors? Or?
Yes, sir, we are. Yes, sir. We are.
Very good.
No, go ahead.
And to the concerns of the future and what we would do to it, because I know that was one of the things that came up. Mr. Biondo was asking questions as, if we wanted to say, our intent is, of course, to be a funeral home. We can't predict the future. We have family members that are currently in school. We have family members that are going to hopefully, as we hope when we're dead and gone, but we'll be dead, so we don't know, continue to move on with the House of Law Funeral Home. We are doing whatever we can that if it is ever sold, that those restrictions are there so someone just like when someone comes in and pre-plans a funeral with us, they try to follow our wishes. And if it was sold, it would go to another funeral home, or it would be converted to something that was for residential use. So that is, of course, our hope in our plan.
Very good.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank
You're very welcome.
Let me add, I didn't speak upon the economical impact. We would hope to hire 15 to 20 people as well. And we had one other, actually a cousin of mine, he had hoped to speak before you tonight, but he's busy campaigning to be the next lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania, Austin Davis.
All right.
Yeah, Austin. Thank you.
If this property would remain the footprint as is and turn into funeral home, would you hire Monroeville Police to block the road, to let the cars out on your procession? How would you work that?
Currently, right now, in Penn Hills, we don't have the need, and it's much more constricted than this is. Here in Monroeville, we'd have entering and an exit gate, whereas in Penn Hills, it's, but I don't feel that there would be a need for.
When you come out, you would have to probably make a left turn,
Correct.
and then that would block traffic. Okay, thank you.
Some of that may be subject to the collective bargaining agreement with the police on what they're. So,
And can I speak to one other thing as far as because this is what came up with the planning meetings before, the crematory. That's not our plan to do a crematory. We do cremations now, and we do not have a crematory on site. So we do cremations. If we are able to and we plan to, of course, it would go through the zoning board and any ordinance that needs to be, but it doesn't, it doesn't hurt our business not to have a crematory. Actually, our business is growing so much that's why we're coming to Monroeville. We have a lot of residents that come from Monroeville to Penn Hills to have services.
Understood. Very good. Thank you.
thank you.
So I'll open up the floor for anyone from the community that would like to add testimony. And if there is, at the end, I will allow the attorney and the laws to maybe clarify questions that may come up. Sir, please. Sir, and you were sworn in earlier?
Yeah, I've raised my right hand.
That's
Does that
good
work?
enough. And then did you sign in? Could you sign in for me, please?
Sure.
And then after you're done signing in, you could state your name for the record.
And you want a phone number?
On that, please. You don't have to give it, you don't have to speak it, but just write it down.
What you're writing, I can tell you the spelling of your name.
My name is John Kutz, K-U-T-Z, and I live on Colgate Drive, and we've been residents here in Monroeville since 1967, which has been a while, but I'd like to speak against the rezoning. And there are a couple of reasons. One is a minor reason that I've always viewed that property as kind of a nice buffer between the business community and the residential areas that branch off Haymaker Road. But the most important reason, I think, is that I really have a hard time believing that this business or any other business would not impact the traffic on Haymaker. And if you all are familiar with Haymaker, the traffic is pretty outstanding sometimes. And making a left turn off Colgate can be pretty exciting. And that's basically it. So I would urge that the application be rejected.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Kutz.
Before this gentleman sits down, if I show him, excuse me, sir, can you point out where you live on the?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get this right before the end of the night.
Here's Colgate, we're right there.
So it's designated by 857-S-193.
Whatever, yeah.
Okay, and this is the property, and you're on this side of Colgate, is that
Right.
correct?
Right,
Okay.
making a left turn out here can be exciting at times, as I've seen. I really have a hard time that Well, any business in this area in here is not going to impact the traffic on Haymaker.
And would your concern be the same as this property was developed residentially and you put on that 4.5 acre lot a number of homes?
It would be basically, yeah, but, it's zoned the way it is, and there isn't a whole lot you could do about it. So,
Okay, all right, thank you.
Very good.
I'm going to leave this map up here in
Yeah, that'd
case
be
any
fine.
other residents. Thank you, sir.
Certainly.
Yeah, I already signed up. My name is Kaplan. I live on Drake Drive, only for 30-plus years, so relatively
sign
speaking.
in, sir?
I already signed it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I'll start with the end. I think I very strongly object to this business. With all due respect, I don't question the need for the business. I think Monroeville needs more businesses, but there is a reason why some areas are zoned residential and some are zoned commercial. And Monroeville has plenty of commercial empty spaces. I think, first of all, Mr. Kutz, I totally agree with him. Making a left turn, especially off Colgate, is a dangerous adventure many times. So adding more traffic will add undue hardship to us and will probably, most likely, reduce values of our properties accordingly. Now, the second reason, I think Mr. Adams brought up a question, and I think it was kind of brushed aside. I don't question integrity and intentions of the laws. I'm sure what they want to do is to build a funeral home. But what if 10 years down the road they decide to sell this property? Now it's zoned commercial. Could it be a gas station? Could it be a department store? Could it be a commercial building with God knows what? We don't know. So who is going to put that genie back into the bottle? Nobody. Once you zoned it commercial, it is commercial. They may never intend to sell. We all know a lot of companies that existed for many years and then they disappeared for various reasons. What happens then? For the reasons of hardship with traffic and, in my opinion, negative effect on property values, and because Monroeville has plenty of opportunities for a business to establish itself in a properly zoned area, I think I would welcome this business to Monroeville. I live in this community, but I live in this community because I wanted to live in a residential area, not in a commercial area. And I think you would open an opportunity for God knows what down the line if you rezoned it. So for all those reasons, I urge you to reject this proposal. Thank you.
Please, sir. And were you sworn in earlier?
No,
Were you here?
I was not.
If you don't mind?
I don't mind.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And if you could just sign in for, in front of you there, and then once you sign in, just state your name for the
Great.
record, please.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. My name is Evan Frazier. I'm a resident of Monroeville and really pleased to be here. I live on Shalimar Court, and I'm really here to speak on behalf of the importance of the rezoning. I think it's really critical to have businesses from an economic development standpoint, creation of jobs, but also positive economic activity. And it's particularly important to have African-American businesses. As a resident of Monroeville, I feel very proud of the fact that we're able to increase businesses, and for the purposes stated earlier, certainly very supportive of the reasons and the need for a business, funeral home in particular, particularly when you have a family that's been well established in this business. And so I would certainly welcome them to my neighborhood. I travel through that area all the time, and certainly have no concerns, but I think there's much more upside than any kind of downside that I can imagine there would be out there. So I'm just here to urge that you might consider supporting this rezoning for the purposes as stated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have a quick follow-up question? I'd love to you. Sorry. From what I understand, there were a few meetings, planning commission meetings that were mentioned. I found out about all of this by accident. What is the rule? Why are we not informed properly about something as important as this?
All of our public meetings are advertised.
Advertised, so I would have to go on a website to look for meetings and agendas?
Yeah, there, in some instances, depending on the proximity of where one's home is and what's going on at that location, some residents may receive letters based on the proximity, but as far as anyone else, I mean, these are just advertised meetings, and it's a responsibility of the resident to pay attention to what's going on in their community.
But this is practically next door to where I live. I may be 150 feet away, 250 feet away, but it's next door. It's really important to me to be a part of this discussion, I think, and maybe other people too. So it's I think
Mr.
it's very
Kaplan,
strange.
did you receive a certified letter that there would be a rezoning?
No, I didn't receive anything. I
Oh,
found
it's
out by
all,
accident that.
He may be outside the
He might
300
be
foot
outside,
diameter.
okay.
What's the
Is it
what's the
150
distance?
feet?
300 feet from the
300
edge of the
300 feet.
property.
Yeah, but
You're on
it's-
Drake, you probably are outside of the,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's,
We have very specific laws that we have to follow, and those gentlemen follow them every time. Every time. If you're not in that distance, then they're not responsible for anything outside of that distance.
And that's why we also post the orange placards, so that, anybody driving by can see that there's a public notice.
They put up those small signs.
well, I don't know, I certainly,
and we're meeting
Understand.
publicly right now. This is, it's a public meeting. It's televised. We record this meeting. It's put on YouTube, and there are no votes taken this evening, so we have a whole week, and there's another opportunity for residents to come to next Tuesday's meeting to speak for or against.
the same time?
Yes, 7 PM.
Okay. Well, it's just, this is an important discussion, and I think everybody who spoke here in favor, I think it's a good idea to bring this business to Monroeville. It's a needed service in Monroeville. I just don't think the location is wrong for this.
Understood, understood.
That's all.
Very good.
Can I ask a question?
Let's stick with adding testimony for now. Sir, were you sworn in earlier?
I was.
Did you sign in for me, or could you please?
I can, sure.
Take your time, and then once you're signed in, if you could state your name for the record.
Hello.
Welcome. So you state your name for the record, please.
My name is Otis Mills Jr. I am a resident of Monroeville for, what, close to 50 years? Yeah, so we've been here a while. Had to ask the boss.
Smart man.
This was very interesting hearing. I'm familiar with the services that the people here are proposing. I have witnessed their business. I have actually dealt with your first services, and I'm really glad to see them here for a couple reasons. Number one, Haymaker is a very busy area, very busy. I live on Haymaker. I also live on Colgate. I have properties in both places. And we know that businesses drive Monroeville, but those businesses vary in types and widths. There are schools, there are churches, there's a great many activities that happen for the community on Haymaker, right? And especially in that area because of the hospitals. So I was coming up here to talk in favor of having this thing happen. I think this is a good thing for a couple reasons. Number one, Monroeville is one of the few places I've lived that is genuinely integrated. It has people of all colors, sizes, beliefs, right? And the neighborhood that I raised my children in was Garden City. From there, we moved over to the Haymaker area. We had a couple homes in Garden City. We have a couple homes in the Haymaker area. And I still have my mother-in-law and my sister still in the Monroeville area. I think that this is good for Monroeville for reasons that haven't been spoken about here, and I hope that's okay if I speak on them from my heart. Right? My belief is that we have a very integrated community, and that includes a lot of African Americans. But there's not a lot of African American businesses in the area. There are not. I have witnessed and used these services. I know they did not ask me to speak, but I have actually met these people in person. They are very professional. I've attended a couple funerals, as we all have at this age, as part of our lives. But I watched them as a not only service to people in dealing with the loss, because this is a terrible time to have to go to a business, but also in the preservation of a standard of how do you treat your customers. And even in that small little lot they have in Penn Hills, which I know about, right? They always manage in a very concerted and fastidious way of having traffic coming in and out of one of the busiest intersections in that area, right? So I heard some of the concerns about, will this be able to handle it? From my experience watching them work, the answer is yes, right? I hope this will not, as a matter of fact, I hope this is the first of many new businesses that will bring a breath of fresh air to Monroeville. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would
Now,
it be out of order to add a footnote to Mr. Kaplan's concern about publicizing the meetings?
Let's give everybody an opportunity to give testimony, and I will give everyone ample time. You have not been sworn in?
No.
Okay, I'll let you sign your name, and then we'll take care of that. You raise your right hand for me, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Nothing but the truth.
Thank you. If you can state your name for the record.
My name is Dara Obazanu. I live on Colgate Drive. Actually, the property concerning actually butt against my property in the
Okay.
back.
Understood.
I've worked in the funeral business for over, I'll say 25 years. And I have not had the opportunity to work with Mr. Law, but I've worked with other directors outside of Monroeville community, mainly because we don't have that service here in the community. The concern about the traffic on Haymaker Road, I've watched it grow, especially with the Haymaker Village having their development. And I think that That concern is a valid concern, but at the same time, we are a growing community, and I think that is not something that we can't handle in the future, because I've watched both churches have their activity on Haymaker Road, and it wasn't a big concern. It always panned out, and not to be a concern that it interfered or impede anybody from doing their business. I fully support Mr. Laura because I know that it's a needed service in our community. I've always had to go outside, and when I say outside, families in Monroeville had to go outside to do this business because they didn't have one here. And Mr. Law can only handle with so much. So they having to end up maybe going to another director. But again, I'm in full support of this here service. I really don't think it will add any complications to what we're doing now here in Monroeville. It's a part of the growing episode that we're experiencing in Monroeville. I myself, leaving my home on a Saturday to a Sunday, going to the mall, it takes me about maybe 20 minutes, whereas on I'll say a weekday, might take me 10 minutes. So Mr. Law's business, I don't think will add on to that or take away from that. So I just want to say I'm in full support.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll leave the floor open.
I didn't do the,
We'll do that now. How about that?
okay,
Okay. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you. Then could you sign in for me? And then once you do, you could state your name for the record.
Okay. Teresa Boguslawski, and I live on Colgate. I'm the fourth house down. My main concern is, we already deal with, the left-hand turn. And traffic comes down pretty fast, and there's just kind of a little curve there that you really have to be careful of. I wanted to mention something else, but that's on a side note. My main concern is the traffic. Forbes Hospital is right there, and there's a lot of traffic going in and out there. And there is a light, which is before you would come to the funeral home. So it's just really congested right there. And with the funeral home there, my main concern is the traffic. And how will they handle that when there is, a funeral there? I agree that is needed in the community, but like I said, my main concern is how is the traffic going to flow when there's a funeral there? It's bad enough as it is now on Colgate. So.
Understood. Very good. Thank you.
Oh, my husband wants to talk.
Okay.
I'll sign him in.
He probably signed his name better than he does.
Well, he has a
Forge on the
problem.
document.
You can swear me.
Okay. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Emmerich Rubus. I live on Colgate, and for 26 years, I've seen traffic grow tremendously from when we first moved there. And you guys have the best intention for us residents, and I can appreciate that, but it's gonna affect us on Colgate the most with the traffic is what I'm afraid. And nothing against these people and their business. I believe they have the best intention, but every time another business is approved, like Starbucks that was approved, it just creates a little more traffic. UPMC created a lot more traffic, and all that traffic flows down to Haymaker. So getting in and out just makes a big mess at certain times of the day. Forbes Hospital, all that creates a nightmare at certain times. Then add the school buses, it's really tough. So that's what our concerns are with this. Thank
Understood.
you.
Thank you. I'll leave the floor open.
I was not sworn in, so I'll sign in.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. If you could just state your name for the record.
My name is Kevin I. Pollard, and I've been a resident of Monroeville for the last 17 years. For the first 15, 16 years, I was down in Trefoil Court, and I just purchased my first home last year on Jameson Lane. I'm here tonight in full support of the laws, of the zoning being rezoned so the laws can operate their business. I do understand the concerns for traffic. I'm a Port Authority bus driver. I've been a bus driver for the last 5 years. And I've driven not just with my bus, but in my own vehicle on this particular street. Not to mention, and I understand there's a lot of traffic with it. People have concerns about that traffic on Colgate, making that left. I understand that. I was previously, when I was looking for a home, there was a house on Colgate that I was actually looking at, so I understand that turn and that intersection. But I want to bring to light something. Job Funeral Home on 445 Beatty Road. I'm pretty sure a lot of people know that intersection. I do as well. That intersection is hard to maneuver and navigate with a bus concerning traffic, but it happens, and it happens smoothly. Also, Cole Funeral Home on 4335 Northern Pike. Same issue. Traffic will always evolve. It'll always make its way. And if I'm correct with this particular, I'm not gonna, don't quote me, please. I'm not 100% sure. But if and when services are let out or people are leaving this particular site, if I'm correct, a left turn would have to be made. And that is before Colgate, if I'm correct. So.
If they were going back.
Yeah, if they were going
Monroeville,
back towards
Monroeville,
Monroeville, yes. So that
You
would
would leave to make a right to go to Colgate.
Correct. So I just want to I fully support this zoning for the Law family. I've known them the last 15 years. Mr. Law's grandson and my son are best friends. I treat their grandson like a stepson. Actually, I call him my nephew. So I'm not just familiar with the laws business-wise, but personally as well. So, 100 years, you said, Pop? 100 years and 29? That's a lot of integrity right there. That's a lot of integrity right there. And I'm fully sure and willing to bet my life that any issues that would ever come to light, this family is more than capable of taking care of. Thank you.
Thank you.
I haven't been sworn in.
Okay. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have you signed in yet?
Not yet. My name's Dixie Rounds.
Dixie?
I live at the corner of Colgate and Haymaker, so I know traffic. I know these are lovely people, and they'll be good neighbors. I'm quite sure this is a done deal, and that's fine. I think the problem with traffic, though, would be, I know how busy your Penn Hills company is, and we know what the traffic is like there. And there's a lot of on-street parking. And the problem we would have getting out of Colgate is if there is parking along Haymaker, right after you get, there are 50 parking spaces. Yeah, there are 50 parking spaces, okay. 50 parking spaces currently at Trinity Lutheran, the property we're talking about. And I don't know if that's enough. Probably for some services, it wouldn't be enough. When people start parking on Haymaker, it obstructs the view getting out of Colgate. That's the biggest fear. Everyone's been talking about traffic, and I'm concerned about it too, because we live right at the corner, but not at the expense of widening the road. We're not talking about making Haymaker 4-lane to accommodate traffic. As long as no one parks on Haymaker, I think we'll just do fine with the traffic. We're used to traffic. I just don't want us to get to the point where we widen the street and take half of our lots away. So that's just I welcome you as neighbors. It'll be fine. But the parking on Haymaker, if indeed overflow has to go up, there's enough area space with, the property that I'm sure they could expand parking if need be. So that's just my concern and 2 cents worth.
No, thank you. And Haymaker is a county road. As far as parking, Mr. Wield, Mr. Hugus, if this property was rezoned, as we're talking about, and if it were a funeral home, they could just add parking up there.
No, the county would have to do any type of restriction on Haymaker Road. We've talked about that before, about certain sections of Haymaker Road. But ultimately, the municipality would have to pass an ordinance, and the county would have to agree to it.
Very good. Sharon,
I'm good.
you okay? Okay.
Hello.
Have you been sworn in yet?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and if you just state your name for the record.
Gail Mills. I reside on Haymaker Road, but as my husband said, we also have a property on Colgate. What I would like to say about this happening is, I know all about the traffic on Haymaker because I live there. I know about the Colgate because I live there too. I don't think it'll have much of an impact because there was a pretty large church congregation. They got in and out of there when they were supposed to. I think also that them coming in, refurbishing this deteriorating building and parking lot will be a plus for all of us. I don't think it'll be a handicap in the neighborhood at all. It'll be an asset. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I haven't been sworn in.
All right, great. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Should I
Susan,
sign?
have you signed in, please?
My name is Susan Delaney. Many of you I know, and many of you I don't know. I'm on the school board for Gateway, and I happen to be coming to this meeting for other reasons, but I'm so glad I did show up. Even though I have not had the privilege of using the law's service right now, I'm so glad, but but I have attended services that they've had in Penn Hills, and I can again speak to the professionalism, the integrity, and all of individuals who lived in Monroeville and took their family members to Penn Hills, because there was not a service that did at that time, at this time, services African Americans particularly that they wanted to have. And again, we know the traffic is an issue. It's an issue anyway off of Haymaker for a number of reasons, but I don't think denying a business that this type of business, particularly that we know is one that's so necessary, that we should in any way, when we want to look at diversification, as we've always tried to do in Monroeville, and just as another African-American business, I think it would be an asset.
Thank you. Now we'll leave the floor open for anyone who'd like to add testimony during this public hearing. Okay, Attorney Lonich, please. Yeah, Tom?
Thank you. I just have a couple points briefly, and I'm going to kind of turn, I don't mean to turn my back, but I want to address one of the questions. There is no intent to have any parking along Haymaker Road. Mr. and Mrs. Law, that business would have.
Just face forward, because otherwise the microphone.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't mean to turn my back.
Actually, if you, just speak up loud enough, so they can.
Okay, there would be no intent to have any parking along Haymaker Road. They would have no more right to do that than any resident could park along there. And if there is some type of an ordinance, police restriction, they'd have to abide by that and be towed away or subject to a fine or a ticket or whatever that would be. So that wouldn't be a concern. I would like, if Mr. Law can just come up for a moment. I know there's an issue in the primary opposition seems to be in this, what's going to happen with traffic. Mr. Law, you're still under oath, but would the funeral home employ individuals who are trained concerning traffic regulations and things of that nature?
Absolutely. I would say that Frankstown is at least as busy as Haymaker. And not only do we have people that are trained to handle the traffic on Frankstown, but we travel all over the city and western Pennsylvania as well. And I mean, that's what we do. And to expedite a funeral, we have people that are trained to monitor and properly direct the situation.
I'd also want to add that.
But let me, one more thing. And as far as the parking up on Haymaker, as it is right now, I think we have 60 parking spots, and we have an area to put another 50 in, and that's something that we're contemplating as well.
Okay, thank you. We do not have anything else for myself and Mr. and Mrs. Law. I want to thank the board for allowing us the opportunity to speak tonight, to make our claim, our case, and for your patience. I also wanted to note and to thank Mr. Wilden and Ms. White. They have been very helpful to me throughout this process and have responded timely on emails and provided information. And I realize that that may be his job and Ms. White's job, but they have done so professionally, and I just want to note my thanks to you for that.
Thank you.
And this, I have just last question.
We'll
It's very,
now.
it's just an easy one. And actually, Ms. Delaney made me think of this for some reason or another. So this property is currently a church, correct? So it's not on the tax rolls? And a funeral home would put this back on the tax rolls, is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yes. Very much.
Unless I can get creative and get it off of there. But no, yes.
You're good, but not
It does not, to my understanding, it does not qualify for a tax exemption as a church does.
If it does.
Yeah.
Find it.
I guess a question for staff, current use for the church that's there, the parking, the building that's currently there, the parking lot conforms for that building, like that's proper, the size?
I've never calculated the number of spaces there as to what is required. It would obviously be considered existing non-conforming if it didn't meet requirements. I don't know of any traffic issues with the current church.
And in funeral homes in general, as far as how parking spots are calculated? Is it based on the square footage of the building?
That's normally how we do it. For a funeral home, I don't think we have, in our current ordinance, we don't have a separate parking calculation for funeral home. Obviously, some funerals generate a lot more traffic than others. But as was stated, this property currently has a governor's drive. So, you know, it's like an eyebrow, so it does help with traffic flow.
I would also add that if there is a person who will be viewed there at the funeral home, and there is an expanse or they anticipate an overflow crowd, arrangements are sometimes made with the neighboring properties so that you can park there and then are shuttled over to the funeral home access. So you don't have to worry about necessarily people parking across the street at the other church and walking across Haymaker or anywhere else. Arrangements are all done prior to all that for excess parking, shuttle services, and things like that.
Well, Mr. Law made a statement that there's 60 parking places there now, and he's planning on putting in 50 more.
We have the
There's
capacity.
would be able
That's
to.
something that we would consider.
Yes.
Actually, in talking with the contractors, that was something that we inquired about.
Council, any further questions for the applicant or for their attorney?
And I know that we plan to be present next Tuesday when the board has a voting meeting. But in the interim, if anybody has any questions for me, whether it's proper to pass those through your solicitor, everybody has my contact information, so please don't hesitate to reach out and give me a holler and anything I can clarify or do whatever we can.
Thank you. Did you want to add one more thing?
No. Trying to shorten the meeting.
In general, very quick. There are quite a few people here theoretically suspect that there will be no problem with traffic. I just wanted to mention that this is not like a trial and error kind of thing. If you rezone, and this is a very traffic-intensive business, if you rezone and there is a problem with traffic, you can't roll it back. So when people say we don't think it will affect traffic because we passed by that intersection and it's okay, I can tell you I live there, and turning left is very difficult already. So
Very good.
just
Understood.
keep it in mind, please.
Council, Mr. Ratch, you have anything else to add?
I
for
have
testimony?
nothing else. If council has nothing else, then just a motion to close the public hearing and go from there.
Is there a motion to close the
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The public hearing is closed. I want to thank everyone for their testimony this evening. Once again, we are not voting on this item this evening. We will be considering it for next Tuesday, the 13th. Certainly when we talk about rezoning any property, it's not about what it was planning on going there, wants to go there. We've heard a lot of great testimony here. No one here is questioning the integrity or professionalism of the Law family through how they've demonstrated, throughout this whole process, and certainly their business history in other communities as well. But what council has to determine if the C2 use for that area is what's proper for that area. And that's what they'll be determining next Tuesday. So with that, actually, we're going to move on to our next item of new business.
Mr. Mayor, can
Yes.
we have 5 minutes?
Let's take a recess. Give our stenographer a break. So we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Thank you.
And we're back.
This meeting is out of recess. It is still, we're at the September 6th agenda-setting meeting, approximately 9:05 p.m. Moving on to our next item of new business, 22-3-SUB. Mr. Little.
Yes, this is the Keene Estate subdivision plan. I'm going to read from the resolution directly. on the plan. It's the final subdivision application number 22-3 SUB of the Keene Estate to subdivide and consolidate tax parcels 857P 186 Lot 682 and 857P 184 Lot 6B2 into Lot 1C with a total acreage of .550 acres. And it's just a reverse consolidation.
Council, any questions? Mr. Wilden, any question or issues or problems with your?
It's very simple. It's just a small residential consolidation.
Very good. Council, moving over to resolutions, we have two this evening. Mr. Little.
Yeah, the first one is a housekeeping item we do every September. It's a resolution under Act 205 of 1984, known as the Municipal Pension Plan Funding Standard Recovery Act, authorizing the 2022 minimum municipal obligation, MMO, for the police and non-uniform pension plans. Josie, who is not here this evening, Josie Rock, our finance director, she usually sticks in the numbers, but if you want to see the numbers for the MMO for the police pension plan, they're on the second green sheet, pink sheet. But for the non-uniform, which they come from the Pennsylvania Municipal Retirement System, those numbers are not in yet. And each year, we usually get those in very late. But under Act 205, Act 205 just says we have to present this to council, but I put it in a resolution form. It has to be presented to council before September the 30th. So we will have those numbers for you next week. And this is, to keep in mind, this is for the MMO for the following year, for 2023. We have to do this for budgetary purposes. It's not for this year, it's for next year, for what we have to put into the two defined benefit plans.
Understood.
Any questions on that, council?
Next item.
Okay, next one is, second resolution is a resolution recognizing the Garden City Swim and Tennis Club as a civic and/or service association under the local option Small Games of Chance Act as amended. This is kind of a housekeeping item where we have occasionally people that want to run games of chance, 50-50s and such, and a resolution under the county has to be passed. Any questions on that, council?
Seeing none, we're going to move on to our reports of municipal staff. Mr. Ratcher, anything this evening?
I do have something, Mayor.
Please.
At the request of Councilman Williams, I've prepared an ordinance that will prohibit the parking of vehicles on people's front lawns in residential areas. This is something that we've seen more and more of, and Mr. Williams has asked me to prepare an ordinance. So tonight, we're asking for council's permission to advertise that ordinance, and then future action would be taken on it, up or down, once we've advertised it and had a chance to discuss it and so forth.
Very good. So what you're seeking for this evening is just for it to be on the agenda for Tuesday.
Permission to advertise.
For
Yeah,
advertising
we
on
actually have to
Tuesday.
advertise it ahead of time.
But we'll consider that on Tuesday,
Tuesday?
Yes, yeah,
the 13th.
yeah.
No.
Very good.
You answered my question already.
It'll be on the agenda for
Yes.
Tuesday,
Yeah.
correct? Anything else, Mr. Ratcher?
Nothing else.
Mr. Little?
Okay, the first item is the five-year capital improvement program. Council instructed me last month at the agenda-setting meeting to recommend to them what we could afford under debt service for the five-year capital improvement program without raising taxes. And in your packet is the same amortization schedule that I gave to you with several different options. And just to reiterate, there is an option 1, there is an option 2, and there is an option 3. The option 1 is for 10 years. And just to go over that, each column, step 1, step 2, and step 3, is for approximately $10 million. So step 1 would be 10 million, step 2 would be 20 million, and step 3 would be for 30 million. Then you have option 2, which is the same thing for the same amount of money for 10, 20, and 30 respectively. However, it's for 20 years. And option 3 is what is called a pro rata wrap. And basically, all that is a little bit of a smoothing, so you would not have a little bit of a bigger debt service payment. For instance, if you can go back to option 2, and you could see, for instance, in year 2026, we'd have a $3.5 million debt service, where that is smoothed out a little bit under the column 3, under option 3. So those are your kind of really 9 different options, depending on the term and the amount of money that you would entertain borrowing under a bond issue. And you ask me to recommend to you what I think is we could do without a tax increase. Right now, as you probably know, I mean, we restructured our debt service 2 years ago, where we had been paying $3.2 million for, a number of years, 12, 13, 15 years, which I always thought was too high. We restructured that, where now we're paying approximately $1.4 million, which is more reasonable as far as I'm concerned. And if you look at option 2, column 2, that column is for $20 million for 20 years. And you can see your debt service payment under that column would be virtually the same as what you're paying right now. Now, it would expire, or it would come to term in the year 2043, because obviously the term is 20 years. So that would be one right there that I would recommend. Or even option 3, as I said, this is now option 3 in column 2 is a little shorter. It's only 2 years shorter, and you can see where your debt service payment goes to $1.7 million. Not that we couldn't afford that, but for 2 years, gaining 2 years, if indeed you wanted to go out 20 years, your debt service would remain the same at entering into a bond issue for 20 years. Now, if you don't feel like going 20 years, we could even structure this to go 15 years. And, having it in between 10 and 15 years at 20 million. Now, I don't have that in front of me because I haven't asked Public Financial Management to do that, but we could even do that. So that would be my recommendation. We could just continue on, and you could have a bond issue of $20 million and continue with the same debt service, albeit till the year 2043. Now, if you would look at, if you remember, if you do have your capital improvement program, we have a total of a 5-year, from year 2022 to the year 2026, which that is going to have to be moved up a year from, so the capital improvement program most likely will be from 2023 to the year 2027. And there's approximately $26 million worth of projects to enter into in procurement of vehicles and such over that 5-year period. And with the fund balance we have now, and some grants, we'd have a $15 million deficit. As you can see, it's about approximately $15.4 million deficit. Now, the $20 million obviously would cover that, and we could still do the debt service moving ahead. Any questions on that?
Council, any questions?
Did you say you were going to set up the numbers for a 15-year?
I could get that for you. In fact, I might be able to get that I probably can get that for you by next Tuesday if you want me to. Now, keep in mind, Mike, just like if you look at the pro rata part, because it's only 18 years, your debt service increases to 1.7 from approximately 1.4 to 1.7. In the beginning, it's a little higher. And obviously, no, as a matter of fact, you're paying less interest. On the option 3, column 2, you're paying $4,683,000 in interest. On the other one, 4.9. Oh, it's a longer period. It's a longer period. That's why I thought maybe because that was a little higher. No, yeah, okay, that's because that's for a longer period. Now, right now, the rate, as we speak, is approximately 4%, issuing a bond. Now, you can go up and go down, but most likely it could go up. the way things are going. But it's still, historically, it's still at a low rate. But it wasn't what it was last year at this time. So it's about 4%. I kind of thought maybe somebody might be thinking about that. But I can get, Mike, if you want me to get that, I'll get that for council next week.
Please.
Yeah, why not? Do the rest of you
years?
think it'd be worth looking at?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Right now, staff is in the process right now. You have a rough draft of the capital improvement program. Staff is right now putting a little bit of a narrative to it, more so for you, but also for the public in layman's terms on what each project would entail. Not each individual line item, but the road program, for instance, the vehicles. The chief is advocating buying hybrids, just a little sentence, why do you want to buy hybrids? Things of that nature, so the public understands where their tax dollars are going.
Very good.
Okay?
Any other questions or comments about this item or about the capital improvement program in general, council? Seeing none. Next
Okay,
item.
next item on the animal control policy, I'll hold off on that until next week for the sake of brevity. Not that I'm going to talk a long time on it or anything, but certain things out of that the public, should know, just a couple changes. The next item is, next month will be the 2023 budget presented to council. Staff, we started about a month ago, starting to put that together, and we will have that together at the presentation of that at the council meeting next month. And we also have a household hazardous waste and electronic collection event on October the 8th at the Public Works Department from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And there is a fee for throwing something away, and I would register on the website. Also not on my agenda is we had the Monroeville Jazz Festival this past Saturday, and I would have to say from my experience, it was the largest and most well-attended one we've had. I would have to guess, there's no way of really knowing, except by the cars that are parked. We had at least 2,500 people throughout the day. We had 3 very good jazz bands, and we started at about 2:10, started a little bit late, and it ended about 8:30. And I thought everybody had a great time. I think it was one of the best jazz festivals we've had in my tenure here, that's for sure.
When you run out.
So.
Very good.
Okay, thanks, Jared. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Mr. Hugus, anything this evening?
No, sir, I'm good.
Good to hear.
You are good.
Council members, we'll start with you, Mr. Hizzy.
I got just a few things. Hate to say this, but first of all, I wanted to thank the library for inviting us over to the Fun Fest. It was a great event. I was very surprised and shocked to see all the people over here. Kudos to the library. Great event. This is stuff I don't want to talk about. The problems we've been having down on Patton Street with the traffic and that. After having a meeting with the county guys this afternoon, that's why I was a little late coming to the council meeting today. I'm usually here a lot earlier. We were notified, unfortunately, that they're going to shut down the Triborough Friday night till Monday morning. So neighbors, be aware. Mr. Cole, Chief Cole has not designated, but has patrols down there on peak times down in our areas. I know they did stop a few people. I listened to them today. So they're out doing their jobs. We have no say-so what this county does on their roads. Once they shut the roads down, they say shut down, people are allowed to go anywhere they can. We can't just, without traffic study, Paul, on roads to put speed bumps on. So we're doing the best we can right now in a little bit of time. I was told they should have the road open by mid-October to late October, depending on the weather. That just paved portions they're digging out so we could travel both ways. Then during that period, November, it should be completely finished. That's what I was told today. So believe in the county what you want to do. And for the people who called me today about Haymaker, I traveled that hump road today where they paved, I milled, I'm sorry, Slow down. Your head got hit on the roof of a car because you was driving too fast. So, that's all I have to say, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Hizzy. Mr. Poach?
Nothing for this evening, I'll have it Tuesday.
Thank you. Mr. Stevenson?
One quick item. I want to reiterate what I said at the last council meeting. We need volunteers to step up and get on some of our boards and committees. Most of them are one meeting a month. I think anybody out there that's watching this has the ability to do that. Please, try to sign up and get on a board. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you.
Not this long.
Mr. Wolfram?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say I'm glad I'm back here, sitting on the seat. Had some family issues. My father passed away. I'd like to thank everybody who showed up, those who couldn't. I know you were in the thoughts. Basically, that's it. But again, I want to thank council members who showed up and those who couldn't. I understand. So thank you very much.
Hey, Mr. Wolfram. Mr. Adams?
Nothing, Steve.
Mr. Williams?
Yeah, I would like to commend the library. They did a great job at the Fun Fest Saturday with the petting zoo and all the tents and the participants was there. It was just fun to go through that. Another thing is the senior center are having a fundraiser, a hoagie sell, a 6-inch sub for $5. Lots of stuff on them subs. So come on out to the library and order your subs, and you can pick them up. It's a big help for the senior center. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Biondo?
Yeah, echo what everybody said about Fun Fest. It was a great time. Me and Mr. Poach had a great time judging the cupcake contest.
I'm just getting out of the.
And Tim
high.
as well.
Yeah.
I also wanted to say my kids did go to the robot petting event today, and they. I wasn't there, but apparently they had a great time. And the other thing I would just throw out there, just since it is Love Your Library Month, if you have kids, grandkids, there's a Children's Room Facebook page that will keep you up to date on what they have going on for the kids at the library. And that's all I have.
Great. Thank you. And I'll echo my colleagues here, and same thing with Mr. Little said about the Jazz Festival. It was definitely a nice event. So special thanks to the Monroeville Foundation and all of its, the board members, all the volunteers, the vendors. It really took a lot of people to put that event on, our Public Works Department, Parks and Recreation. It was really a well-attended event and a really nice showcase for Monroeville. And it even brought out the City of Pittsburgh Mayor Ed Gainey came out for our Jazz Festival as well. So we definitely are getting some notoriety for it. So keep up the good work. With that, I'll seek a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you and good night.